What's up, sucker? The first one might seem obvious, but you need to know the meta cards and the meta deck lists, especially the shell decks. A shell deck is like a deck with all the cards you need for an archetype. So the shell is the most important part to know because it's going to be the most common cards you're going to be seeing. You can't know every tech because some people are running insane stuff. Like one of my friends is running Cataclysm in Lux Jace, so he can double attack with the Albus Pharaohs. But you're not going to be able to predict that because it's not very common. So here's how you find out the meta deck lists. You go to this great website called runeterra.ar. You go to the stats tab. Click Masters from the last 2 days because that's going to give you the best statistics. You click on all the top 10, 15 decks. Just look at all the cards in it. Try to memorize as many as you can so that you don't get tripped up, so that you know what they're running and what they're not running. And that's probably the most important thing, is knowing what's not in their deck. So for example, Annie Ezreal, it doesn't run Noxian Fervor, it doesn't run Decimate. If you don't look up the deck list and you think that it might, you're going to lose to it a lot more often if you're trying to play around that stuff that they just don't have. And that brings us on to number 2. Now, hand reading is one of the more complicated skills. The most simple way to look at this is by taking each situation and seeing what cards that you think they should have played or what cards that you'd be scared of them playing. And if they don't play them, then they probably don't have them. And if they do play them, then they don't have them anymore, right? Unless they drew 2 copies or they top deck a new one. But those scenarios aren't really worth playing around unless they have something really, really scary that's going to win the game for them instantly. And that if you do play around it, you might still be able to win. That's all I've got for hand reading, unless you have Prank or Swindle. And now I'm going to move on to play speed. And when do you value pressure versus value from a card? Pressure is like, you play it as soon as possible to get it on the board, get as much pressure as possible. That's sort of like an aggro deck, like an Annie Jin right now. And then value would be like a Lux Jace type deck. So you want to save your mana to play a 6-cost spell instead of getting pressure on the board. Or you want to play your Lux before you play your Hex Obliterator, even though it could be a better situation, because you want that extra value without having to spin so many cards. When do you play fast and when do you play slow? Well, it depends on your deck and your opponent's deck. Now, what I heard and what I really think is a useful tip is that if you're playing into something, you either want to be way faster than it or a little bit slower than it. Now, what that means is into control, you're going to want to run it down as fast as you can. And into aggro, you're going to want to play a little bit slower, get a little more value out of your cards. Now, as for passing, passing is a very, very difficult thing that not even most Masters players know how to do. So let's say you're playing an Ionia deck and you want to deny their Champion Strength. Champion Strength costs 9 mana, so if you hold up 4 mana, they won't be able to use their 9 mana spell without being scared. And the other thing is, you can pass on 4 mana and not have the deny. It's a bluff. But they'll be scared of it, and they won't play their Champion Strength. And you can burn up to 9 or 10 mana and win the game that way, right? So that's just something to be thinking about in every situation. Can I pass here? And would it benefit me? Am I going to gain a mana advantage? Am I going to bluff on them? Am I going to make them waste their attack token? There's lots and lots of options here for passing. And then the 5th thing is mental. Take it from me. I'm a little bit of a sick freak, and I lose all my LP all the time, and it sucks having to get it back. Let's say you lose like 3 or 4, get off of the game. Play something else, preferably not competitive, because you're going to lose at that too. Subscribe. That's the secret 6th one.